So after all that discussion we had about the AI and different kinds of contexts in which we talked about it, now we move back to the production desk. So all the editors, of course, more or less work on the production desk. So it is very important session. So I welcome Supriya Thanawala, production editor at Westchester Publishing Press, to share how production editing keeps the business of publishing sustainable and efficient.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the session. Thank you to Vivek for this opportunity to speak. Thank you. So I think it's a really well-organized event, and first of all, I wanted to thank Vivek for organizing this and for getting us all here. So basically to start, my session is basically on sustainable editing and production. So as she just introduced, all of us work on the production desk as editors, but there are different kinds of editing. And I think that with the way things have been changing, production in itself has become a very large concept. So first of all, I'm going to talk about sustainable editing or sustainability where editing is concerned and what we actually mean by sustainability. So a lot of us have already discussed a lot on artificial intelligence and on the positives and negatives of artificial intelligence. So in today's age, like there are a lot of negatives which we've already talked about. I think we need to now focus on how we can sort of channelize artificial intelligence to make it more positive and more productive. So first of all, what are the negatives of AI? Once we become more aware of these things, I think it's possible then to discuss what exactly it is that we need to work on changing with the dangers of AI. So first of all, this homogeneity. There is a sense of homogeneity with AI. Everything is beginning to look the same, and when you create content through AI, it's unethical at many levels, but it also leads to a lot of homogeneity. It leads to a lot of things looking the same. A lot of the content lacks any human element, which is something which happens with over mechanization and over use of technology, which is not moderated. So there's also the threat of fake news, plagiarization. All of these things have sort of accelerated with AI. So how can we use AI productively? I think that is one of the biggest questions of sustainable editing, which as a production editor, I think we would be most concerned with. I believe that instead of using AI as just a be-all and end-all tool, I think the most important thing is to look at it as a mechanism that you can use either positively to preserve ethics and to preserve content and archives, or you can use it negatively to steal. So it's like any technology, any mechanism. So a lock and a key can be used in the same way. So it's the same with any mechanism, whether it's artificial intelligence, a phone, or anything. And we should be using it to assert copyright and to further fair usage, rather than having it used as a tool for people to misuse as something which they use to create fake videos, to plagiarize, to pretend that they wrote something which actually is not an original work. So that is one of the major, I think, relationships that we need to navigate between, about how we can sort of disconnect from those negative uses and move towards the positive uses of AI. And that is the most fundamental thing with sustainability and sustainable editing that a production desk should look into. So today, I think one of the major things that I think all of us have realized is that there are a lot of new publishers and new imprints coming up. And it is this diversity actually that is, what will create sustainability. Because I think that as journalists or as media practitioners, we all know, about basically media monopoly, where one stakeholder or one player tends to control the entire industry or the entire ecosystem. I don't know about how many of you actually read about, Penguin trying to acquire Simon and Schuster, which Joe Biden's government stopped a couple of years ago. So Penguin has been monopolizing a lot. They take over a lot of imprints. Even Random House, which was earlier an independent American publisher, was taken over by Penguin in 2013. And after that, there have been a lot of smaller imprints that Penguin has been taken over. Simon and Schuster was the deal which was about to happen, which finally was stopped. There is a lot of discussion around new publishers coming in, and with that, I think this regulation, where monopolization is not something which is taken for granted, or it's not something that we ignore. I think that is a very central concern to having a sustainable publishing ecosystem where you have diversity. So today you have different kinds of publishers. You have traditional publishers such as the Big Five. They are also publishing. Then you have the non-traditional publishers, which are different kinds of companies, different kinds of NGOs, think tanks, and also university presses. So today a lot of academic non-fiction writing is coming out through universities, which have become a very central kind of a publishing force. And if you look at in the US, university presses have always been very popular. There have been the MIT presses and the Georgetown University presses. Chicago University Press, of course, is very large, and their style guide is considered very canonical. But even in India today, Jadavpur University Press is gaining a lot of traction. So university presses are one huge example of non-traditional publishers who are entering the publishing ecosystem. And then of course there are brands and corporates and businesses also who come out with content. They want to convert their content into books and journals and magazines and archive and curate their research. And finally you have the individuals who are self-publishing. They are also publishers in their own rights. So these are the three different categories of publishers which today are creating this diversity in the market, which I think is the first step towards sustainability and moving away from this kind of monopolization. So basically sustainability is about working with such different stakeholders, in a diverse media landscape. And I have, as a journalist, worked with a lot of different Indian publishers over the last 20 years. And what I have learned from this is that, styles, formats, all of these change as you move forward, as things change, as there are changes in the economy, in the culture, in politics. Styles change, and also there has to be a certain adaptability that we have to bring in and inculcate. So as journalists, I think most of us know that India has had a very diverse range of publications, newspapers, magazines. Today, the media industry is, of course, economically, going through a lot of ups and downs. But if you look at the history of Indian journalism, one can see how many different diverse styles and different diverse stakeholders or players or, newspapers and publications we have had. And over the last 2 years, I've been with Westchester Publishing Services as a project manager, who basically works in doing production editing for our clients in the US and the UK. So here again, I have been looking at diverse stakeholders. So I think the most important crux of it is to be able to adapt with different styles, different methodologies, different kinds of approaches in order to sort of navigate through this kind of a media landscape where there's a lot of disruption between different players, but eventually it's extremely productive, and it leads to a lot of growth for the industry where you break away from monopolization completely. So the role of the production editor or the project manager is becoming central now within this kind of an ecosystem. And the production editor is basically, when you are dealing with so many stakeholders, a production editor is not someone who is just doing one or two things. They are looking at a lot of different things. So I'll go into what exactly production editing is about, because I think that is something which a lot of people would want to know now, with a lot of discussions about developmental editing, copy editing, editing, proofreading. These are different kinds of editing stages, you know. So as editors or as anyone working in publishing, we would know that developmental editing is different from copy editing, but there are overlaps, you know. I mean, you can't exactly always disconnect everything, and you can't always have a different platform for each kind of editing, and there are no watertight compartments. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that these are different stages. So as a production editor, you are not really doing any one thing. You're not a hands-on copy editor per se, but you're providing an editorial oversight. So that basically requires stepping back and, you know, viewing the work from a larger lens. So when you look at it from a larger lens, you're able to, you know, give certain perspectives and insights which someone who is completely involved in the copy, whether it's the author or the copy editor or the proofreader, may not be able to do. So a production editor can sort of diagnose the larger global patterns in a work, you know, look at what are the major issues that are there in a work that need to be adhered to. So a lot of us, when we start with working as production editors, we initially want to involve ourselves in one aspect, you know. So even me coming from a copy editing background, it took me some time to understand the scope of production editing, that while I'm not doing hands-on copy editing, or I'm not doing hands-on developmental editing or even proofreading all the time, I have to be able to make sure that it is done. So it requires delegation. And it requires diagnosing the book or the work, or whether it's an article or a book or anything. It needs a certain diagnosis of what is required. So I think we had a very interesting discussion right now before this also, where we were talking about the, you know, the overlaps between fact checking and how the brief should be clear about what is required. So it's only through the production desk and through project management that you can really sort of understand and assess the work as to what it needs. Because sometimes an author also may be very advanced, you know. I mean, they may not need so much editing, and the work may be very well written. So for somebody to over edit it is also as dangerous as someone, you know, missing out on very important things. But how do you step back and take a larger look at these issues? That is only possible through production editing. So it requires detachment, perspective, and a skill to navigate through multiple departments. And this is what can finally lead to, you know, new publishers, new imprints, because today I think with self-publishing, a lot of new imprints are coming out. So only when you have this kind of you know, skill set in the industry being developed, where you know, new imprints are being given this kind of a service, where they can sort of have somebody step back and analyze the work, give a certain correct assessment, rather than somebody just getting into editing and it leading to, you know, things which may not always turn very palatable for the editor, author, or the final book. So one of the most important things, I think, for the production desk is the style guide. So style guides is something which is a very, very deep topic, and most new organizations still may not have, you know, started formally putting in style guides. So if you have a lot of startups who are running content firms, they don't have style guides, but very established institutions like, you know, very well-known publishers like a Penguin or a university press like MIT Press or Oxford University Press, they would have a clear-cut style guide. So why do we use style guides and why do we need them? Because, you know, I mean, you can always say that an editor has their own instinct, they always have their own thinking, but we need a style guide for several reasons. So there are three main aspects to the style guides that I came across, which I think every style guide is able to address. One is the identity of the publisher or the imprint. When you have so many different diverse stakeholders, every publisher, every imprint, author, publication or editor has an identity which has to be understood. So, you know, two publications can never be the same, and they should not, because otherwise the market is not really benefiting. So the style choices that the publishing house wants to use is unique to that publisher and to their identity and also to their target audience. So sometimes a publisher would choose a style guide as per the audience that they are catering to. So if it's a lifestyle magazine, or, you know, or even a book or an imprint which is a lifestyle imprint, they would have a certain kind of audience in their target audience who they would want, you know, should read their work. So for them, it is important to sort of understand the way that that target audience communicates, speaks, and what will work in order to, you know, help them to receive the content. And that is a part of their branding strategy, their marketing, which is very crucial. The second is the voice. So every author, like we said, has a voice of their own. But even every publisher would have a voice. In order to develop that voice, some amount of prescription is required. And the unique way in which something can be said is possible through this kind of a stylistic prescription that one needs to understand and then follow. Of course, you can always keep enough room to improvise at every stage, because no style guide is stagnant. As the industry changes, as the economy changes, politics change, people's choices and tastes change, a publisher's style guide also has to adapt and move on with that. But at the end of the day, a certain voice can be formulated through a good style guide. Finally, it leads to a lot of market diversification, because it allows for every different publisher to have their own diverse identity understood by the market. So I would know by the style as to which magazine or book I would like to read and what I would like to follow. So that diversification is important for different players to exist and coexist with each other. So in 2021, I produced rather a documentary film which was on media ethics, and it was titled Newsroom Underground, where I interviewed journalists and editors and cartoonists and other media veterans. And it was a 1-hour film which was an in-depth take on the Indian news media. And one of those sections actually dealt with style guides. It was a 1-hour film which I tried to cover a lot through the film. We discussed a lot of issues like fake news, again, a lot of other things like the economy of the media, about how the advertising ratio works with the editorial ratio in terms of content, and how this monetizes any publisher or any publication. So these were all different aspects, but I think one of the sections in that which pertain to style sheets or style guides of Indian publishers, that helped me understand that this is a subject which has not really been taken up enough in the Indian media, which is something which is important for us to understand, because many publishers already follow a style guide. If you look at newspapers and magazines, many of them do have an unconscious style guide or an informal style guide that they have put through, which is a rough sort of a draft. But in order to understand that more clearly, I think we need to get more into the details and the history of the Indian media in order to understand these diverse styles, in order to also further Indian editing and publishing more, so that it grows more. So you can watch the entire film if you want. It's available on YouTube, and I'll just show you a couple of clips from the film. This is just a short montage which I have made, which will give you a gist of some of the visuals that and some of the topics that are covered. And there are 2 small trailers which I'll play after this, which you can watch, which will again give you a sense of what the film is about. It's called Newsroom Underground, and here this is the YouTube link. You can just type youtube.com/@newsroom underground. So you can watch the full film on that, and I'll just play the trailer. 1 second. There are 2 short trailers which I'll play.
Because if you forget your own history, then you are condemned to repeat it.
And I think that's the role of a really good photo editor, understanding the story and understanding the visual that needs to go with it, and sometimes without it.
We're going to meet some of the people who actually bring these stories.
I always wanted to be a journalist from the time I've been in college. I was always an activist by nature, so I've always wanted to know facts behind things. The other thing is to keep a close eye over the decisions made and to see whether the government is actually fulfilling all that they have promised and whether they are doing it in a fair and transparent manner. So in a way, you are a watchdog.
If you look at clinically today, the print media is really not doing too well compared to the earlier years, and nobody is coming out with a new edition. Rather, they're closing it down. Many of the big newspaper or magazine houses are closing their magazines. I think we are satisfied that we survived and still surviving.
I felt that that's exciting, and it's always very interesting to be part of a paper's journey when it's in its infancy.
And uncovering certain cultural aspects that the common person would like to know about.
Not a 9 to 5 or a 1 to 8 job. Now the day begins as soon as we get up. Like you have to check the WhatsApp, you have to check the Twitter, and it's like our railways. Like there can be a problem at any hour of the day. So we have to be alert every time.
What are the distinctions between the ways in which different content is brought out? What are the different roles that journalists play? What are the different ethics?
People read me for my opinions. They do not read me for the news.
Yeah, so that's the basic crux of the film in 2 trailers. So you can probably watch the entire film and do send me your comments and feedback. So one of the sections that the film deals with is, like I said, style manuals in India. And after I finished the film, also I continued to research on this topic because I think that's something which is an issue in itself. And after I've started working with Westchester and I went into a lot more academic editing, I have been analyzing style guides to an extent quite a lot more, and I also worked on a research paper. And one of the things that I came across is that most of the, or at least I understood through my analysis, is that most Western style guides are primarily based on grammar and structure. So if you look at the Chicago Manual of Style, it is very classical in terms of the understanding that it gives you in terms of how you should use syntax. But it's basically syntax and grammar. American Psychological Association is APA, which I think a lot of journalists use a lot more. Chicago Manual is used for academic works, journals and books, but APA is used by journalists and popular publications. So APA is narrative, but again it's formal and structural. And then there is the MLA Style Guide, which is the Modern Language Association, and that focuses largely on how to cite references. So these are very extensive in terms of how you should write and edit. But I think what is missing in these style guides is basically this lack of cultural perspective. And when we talk about artificial intelligence and this problem of non-humanness, or not having, or that over-mechanization which has come in with AI, the homogeneity, and the fact that the human element is being lost from publishing. I think it's also not just about AI, but it's also connected with the fact that the traditional way in which linguistics or style has been looked at has been also overly grammatical. So these formal style manuals are no different than AI in some way, because sooner or later AI and ChatGPT and all these softwares will catch up with these style sheets, and they will be able to do the work of an editor if you only focus on the grammatical and structural aspect, although it's very important. But any AI software will be able to adapt with this kind of a technology and be able to utilize these principles. But I think that the cultural perspective that is lacking is something that needs to be worked on. And that's the reason why, a socio-linguistic perspective needs to come in to style sheets, because style sheets, I think, are rooted primarily in the field of linguistics. And linguistics has 2 branches. One is generative grammar, which is based on phonetics, morphology and syntax and semantics, which is the structural aspect of language. It looks at the, the physical properties of a sentence or a word, but it has a limitation in the fact that it doesn't go into the culture or the history of that particular work of writing. So social linguistics is the second branch of linguistics, which now has, in this last couple of decades, I think, with postmodernism and with a lot of movements coming up, social linguistics has become more popular, but it's still not been applied to style sheets. So I think a style manual should be based on both grammar and social linguistics. And given that Western style manuals don't really go into social linguistics, I think a new style sheet can be created, which is based on more of, non-Western traditions and Indian traditions. So if you look at that kind of a style guide, what are the different elements of the style guide that you would go into? One would be dialects, idolects, jargon and slang. So dialect is basically the, the language which is spoken by a community of people. So let's say that, Maharashtrians or Gujaratis or, South Indians would have a certain non-standard languages or non-standard variations of the, the standardized language that they use. Those are dialects. Idolects are basically the, the language or the style that is used by individuals. So every individual also has a unique style of its own. And then there is jargon, which is used by, certain professional fields and communities. So people working in the medical fraternity would be using certain terminologies. Same with IT or any other, technical field. So they would be using certain technical words which need to, be understood by a lay person by translating that jargon into a common language. And then there is slang. So these are the different kinds of, styles or the different kinds of, elements that are there as part of a community's speech language behavior. So basically what a style sheet needs to do in order to tap into this is to, tap into the sources through which you can get data about these idolects or dialects or jargon and slang. So speech language communities across geographies and neighborhoods, you can look at the speech language trends in certain communities. Let's say there is a dialect which is followed by one sub-community of Gujaratis where they speak Gujarati in a certain way which is not a standardized Gujarati. It's the same with English, because there are a lot of different varieties of English as well. So when we are talking about the English language media, there are a lot of different target audiences which would read and write in their own ways. Then you look at the idolects that are followed by individuals by looking at certain key individuals who have become celebrities. You can also look at the jargon, the youth and Gen Z slang that is, also emerging in the language, in the landscape. And then there are English language speaker communities in the developing world, like in India as well as South Asian countries, where English is not spoken in the same way that it's spoken in the US and UK. And unless these different styles of speaking are understood, a publisher can never really tap into their target audience effectively. So these are the key sources that need to be tapped into as a style guide writer or editor. Then once you collect these transcripts, they should be classified and analyzed. And once you identify the speech behavior, then you can prescribe principles of style that are really truly cultural and social in their scope. And this can help publishers to, further their branding, their voice, their identity, which goes beyond merely grammatical choices. So this is what I wanted to, discuss through style sheets. And then this is a very crucial part of sustainable editing or sustainable publishing, because without style guides you can't again have diversification or identify a publisher or a target audience or even an author's voice or identity in the way that a style guide can help you to do so. Then the final last part which we all I think know about is that self-publishing is today coming up, and the business of book publishing has again transformed because of self-publishing. So self-publishing is something which has opened up a lot of opportunities for new imprints. So when we talk about diversity and diversification of content and publishers and imprints, we can't ignore self-publishers. So I think one of the things that I discovered when I self-published my book was that it's a very liberating and empowering feeling to be able to publish your own book under your own imprint. So it gives you a certain sense of power and a certain sense of autonomy. So I think one of the most crucial thing in self-publishing is that you understand that it is your right to publish, and you have full control over the rights over your book. So when you are commissioned, it's different, I mean, there are different challenges there, of course, but the rights that you have, the control that you have as a self-publisher is something which again adds to a lot of diversity in the market in terms of the kind of autonomy that you can achieve. So creative autonomy is one thing, and also it has created authors in such a way that today an author is an all-rounder. There was a time when an author would be either a writer or an editor. So writers and editors were mainly focused on just one or two aspects. But today, as a self-published author or as an editor who has also probably published under their own individual imprint, you have to take control over the design, every aspect, marketing, typesetting, not just writing and editing. So this kind of all-roundedness is something which will not only give more empowerment to an individual self-publisher, but it will also create more opportunities for a lot of other people, whether they are specialists or they want to be all-rounders. So these are the kind of opportunities that self-publishing has created today in the book publishing business, which also I think has made book publishing that much more sustainable. So self-publishing is basically like a new technology, and once you get the hang of it, it's not difficult to follow at all. So here in self-publishing, one of the things that I think I learned was that you can pay for editorial services. You may hire somebody to copy, edit or proofread your work, but you're not paying to publish. So there are a lot of, today there are a lot of agencies coming up which charge money only to publish, but they're not really charging for any services that they're giving. So Westchester, for example, at Westchester, what we do is we project manage titles, and we have editing and all of these things done, but we are not charging publishers to publish. So publishing in itself is free. There are no charges. So if you want to self-publish your book as an individual also, you can go up on Kindle, Amazon's KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, and you can publish your manuscript. If you understand the process and the procedures, there are no charges whatsoever, and in India, ISBNs are also free. So to get an international standard book number, you have to go to the Raja Ram Mohan website, and there once you register and you upload your documents and your Aadhaar card and everything, you will be assigned a unique ISBN for your book. So it's free to publish. Of course, editorial services are important. It's important to work with other stakeholders, even if you are an independent publisher or an individual publisher, because that is something which brings in more credibility, and also it's also about the time frame and many other things that you are benefiting from when you're working with another professional. So as an author, you can create your own trademark, your imprint. But basically, it's a new technology that is making a lot of things possible, which is what I think is transforming the book publishing industry, and the kind of technology and the kind of access that is emerging because of self-publishing. I think that is what is going to really sort of catalyze a lot of changes, and that is something which is again another aspect to sustainability, which I think is very important to understand in the context of AI. So I think that's largely what I would want to discuss, and I think to sum up, basically the points that I discussed are just this, that one is we should use artificial intelligence productively instead of destructively. The other is to look at style guides culturally and socially and not just grammatically in order to understand a publisher or author or audience's voice and their identity. And to break out of the monopolization of the media, whether it is in book publishing or any other field, I think diverse stakeholders are something that should be celebrated. And finally, publishing needs to be made as accessible as possible. Of course, there are many things now in accessibility which pertain to readers, but also to writers and to editors. So I think that is something which I would like to finally sum up with, and I hope now we can have a discussion on some of the things, and I hope there are questions that we can take forward. So yes, that's finally the gist of it.
Do we have questions? Okay. We just have time for maybe one or two questions.
This idea of the socio-linguistic style sheets is really very interesting. Can you give us some examples of something you might have used or something you will use?
So I think socio-linguistic style sheets, so far I haven't really come across any, but I mean in the publications that I have worked for, sometimes we would go into certain aspects which are cultural choices. So you know, certain things like whether something is ethical to be used, or certain language that whether somebody should use or not use, you know, is also based on a certain cultural choice that the audience is making. So for example, Times of India has certain policies, like they don't you know, have blood splashed on the front page when there is any violence. So that is also a style choice in a certain way. They want a conservative approach. So there are many such things which ethically are practiced, you know, and those can be seen as social. But I think so far there has really not been much research on, you know, the socio-linguistic aspect, where you look at the language of the audience or the person who is reading, as well as the author and the community that they come from. So that socio-linguistic aspect really needs to be developed, and that, I mean, especially in terms of the publications that so far exist, I haven't seen much of. But I think that from the grammatical choices that many publications also make, you can sort of, you know, you can derive certain understandings of their cultural choices. So like for example, a newspaper like Midday, which I also worked for when I was starting out many years ago, they have certain choices of, you know, writing in a certain way, which is very interesting and which is more, you know, palatable to the younger crowd or to the average reader. You know, they wouldn't want to make their language too academic, whereas certain publications like the Hindu would want to, you know, write in a more academic style. Because they are more literary, they cater to a more sort of a academic and literary audience, which is, you know, more focused on theory or books. Whereas a midday audience would be somebody who's reading the paper in the train, and somebody who's going to work on a daily basis. So it depends on the, you know, target audience again, which on the basis of which certain grammatical choices are also put down. So I think that these are the things which you can sort of infer or, you know, decipher from their grammatical choices. But so far I don't think most publications have that fixed you know, clarity on what is a socio-linguistic style that they want to look into. So I think if you also watch my film, I think the part 4 section would cover that. So I think that's where a lot of journalists have discussed the style sheets that their publications follow. So do watch the film.